that it doesn't always show what is there in the outer scene. That means, right now I'm looking at you, or you're looking at me, but suddenly, if you remember something,
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for who is tuning in for this week's scripture study class. So we'll continue our discussion from Uddhava Gita, the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And last week, Ghanshyam Prabhu, he finished the 24 Gurus in the previous chapter of Canto 11, Chapter 9. And this week we'll start a new chapter. So chapter 10 of 11th canto we'll be discussing today. And the title of the chapter is The Nature of Fruitive Activity. So this is Canto 11, chapter number 10. So we'll continue on with our discussion of Uddhava Gita. Unfortunately, Ghanshyam Prabhu today, he couldn't make it for this week's class. He has to attend the disappearance or memorial festival of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So because Prabhu had to attend this festival, he was unable to come, so he asked me to put forward his apologies for not being able to give class this week. So he's asked me to continue on with the Uddhava Gita and go on to the next chapter. So we'll be discussing from Canto 11, Chapter 10, titled The Nature of Fruitive Activity. And we'll see how much we can cover. We'll try to cover the whole chapter today. And this whole chapter, titled The Nature of Fruitive Activity, it's kind of divided into two sections. The first sections, Krishna will continue giving instructions to his dear devotee Uddhava, instructions of bhakti. And the second section of this chapter, Krishna will talk about the atheistic philosophy called Karma Mimamsa. And this, according to this philosophy, it's explained that it's atheistic, they don't believe in God, and their philosophy of life is that you just do good work. If you do good work, if you work hard, if you work sincerely, just do your material, moral duties, then all good result will come, all happiness will come. There's no need to worship God, no need to do any religious activities, spiritual activities. Just do good work, just work hard, do good karma, be a nice moral man. And if you just be a nice moral man in society, all good things will come to you, all happiness will come to you. So this is the philosophy of Karma Mimamsa, which Krishna will explain in the second half of this chapter, and then Krishna will give different arguments defeating this atheistic philosophy of Karma Mimamsa, which says that fruitive activity or work or karma is all in all. You just do good work, you do good karma, all happiness, everything will come. There's nothing beyond this, there's no God. Even if there is a God, still that God is bound by good karma, meaning that even if, for argument's sake, there is a God existing, still if you do good karma, the God, whichever God, he will be forced to give you good results. So ultimately, karma is supreme, good work is supreme. So ultimately, forget everything else, just work hard in your life, work hard and sincerely for your self-satisfaction, and everything will come to you. So that's the philosophy of Karma Mimamsa, which Krishna will talk about later on in the second half of this chapter. And Krishna will give different arguments defeating this philosophy of fruitive activity. Okay, so we'll start with, before we start, we'll recite the verses that Ghanshyam Prabhu has given, some key verses from 11th canto. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we'll read through together the verses, key verses from 11th canto Prabhu has given. Konu rajan indriyavan mukunda charanambujam na bhajet sarvato mrityur upasyam amarotame bhajantiye yata devan deva api tatevatan chayeva karma sachiva sadavo dina vatsalaha durlabho manuso deho dehinam shanabhangura tatrapi dulabham manye vaikunta priyadarshanam yanastaya naro rajanna pramadjeta karichit dhavan nimilya va netre Naskalena patet iha Bhayam dutiya binivesatashat Isad apetasya viparya yosmiti Tanmaya yato buddha abhajetam Bhakche kayesam gurudeva tatma Bhakti parasanu bhavo viraktir Anyatra chesa trika ekakala Prapajyamana sayatas natashus Tusti pusti shudapayo anugasam Shir Havir Uvacha Sarva Bhutesu Yapasyed Bhagavad Bhavamatmanaha Bhutani Bhagavati Atmani Esa Bhagavatotama Ishvare Tad Adhineshu Balisesu Dusatsucha Prema Maitri Kripo Peksha Yakaroti Samajyama Acharyameva Haraye Pujam Yashadaye Hate Natad Bhaktesu Chanyesu Sa Bhakta Prakrita Smritaha Tasmad gurum prapajyeta jignasu sreya uttamam shabde parecha nishnatam brahmani upasamashrayam sarvato manaso sangam adau sangam cha sadhusu dayam maitri prashrayam cha bhutesu adayatochitam parasparanu kathanam pavanam bhagavadyasa mitoratir mitastustir nivritir mita atmanaha. And the verse Ghanshyam Prabhu asked me to discuss this week is at the back of the sheet. It's Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 3, text number 23. So 11.3.23, the second last verse of the series of verses Prabhu has given. So the verse goes like this: Sarvato manoso asangam adau sangam cha sadhusu dayam maitri prashrayam cha bhutesu adayochitam. So I'll read the translation of this verse. A sincere disciple should learn to disassociate the mind from everything material and positively cultivate association with his spiritual master and other saintly devotees. He should be merciful to those in an inferior position to him, cultivate friendship with those on an equal level, and meekly serve those in a higher spiritual position. Thus he should learn to deal properly with all living beings. So this verse is similar verse like this will come across in different other sections of Bhagavatam about how a Madhyama Adhikari or a devotee on the platform of Madhyama, how he, for those who are on an equal level with him, he develops friendship with them. And those who are inferior to him, he feels compassionate and he shows mercy to them, kripa, and he tries to help them come up in their spiritual lives. And when for those who are more elevated than him, for those who are higher than him, he, according to this verse and other verses, again this verse comes up repeatedly again and again in Bhagavatam. It explains that when we come across those who are superior to us, then we take shelter of them, we try and serve them, and we try and get their blessings, and with their blessing we try to improve ourselves to also advance in spiritual life. And in the 11th canto itself, like in this same sheet of verses Ghanshyam Prabhu gave, there's another verse on the third page, 11.2.46, which says, Ishvare tad adineshu balisesu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha ya karoti samajjama. And this verse again is saying the same thing. How a Madhyama Adhikari, he is supposed to be a friend to all devotees, show mercy to ignorant, and disregard those who are envious. So a little bit, this one, 11.2.46, is not talking about those who are superior. So there's a little difference, but we'll see there's very similar verses like this will come across in different sections of Bhagavatam. And there's two extra things this verse is mentioning. One is Sarvato Manaso Sangam, which means that the disciple should learn to disassociate the mind from everything material. So one is to say no to Maya or say no to sense gratification. And Prabhupada, he would always say that we don't have to separately endeavor in our mind and think, okay, I have to say no to this, I have to say no to this, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. Instead, we positively cultivate Krishna consciousness, and just by developing the higher taste, param drištva nivartate, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that Arjuna, by acquiring or cultivating the higher taste of spiritual life or bhakti, one can immediately give up all these lower tastes, all these lower desires for sense gratification. So if we simply cultivate a taste for chanting Hare Krishna, a taste for singing and dancing, taste for deity worship, taste for reading books, distributing books, taste for eating prasad, and naturally we can give up a lower taste or whatever other material desires we have. And next, this verse explains, Adau Sangam Cha Sadhusa, that a devotee, as all of us as devotees, we should positively make an endeavor to get the Sangha of sadhus. So this is very important. In CC, in the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asked Ramananda Roy that what is the most valuable thing in this world? And Ramananda Roy says that the Sangha of the devotees, the association of devotees is the most valuable. And if we study the praise of all great devotees throughout the whole Bhagavatam, whenever a devotee is praying to Vishnu or Krishna, we'll see in Bhagavatam, one of the verses they'll always speak is, please bless me so I have the Sangha of the devotees. We see Dhruva Maharaj, when he's offering praise to Vishnu, one of the verses is asking the same thing, that please bless me so I always stay in the association of devotees. We see Narad Muni asking for this, Prithu Maharaj asking for this. In the same way, the Prachetas also in 4th canto, again when they meet Vishnu, they're again praying for the same thing, please bless us that we always be in the association of devotees. As long as we're in the association of devotees, we'll continue advancing in spiritual life and we'll be protected from falling down. And as Prabhu was mentioning last week, that this was the fault of Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj, he was on the level of bhava, the preliminary stage before love of Godhead. But there was one mistake that Bharat Maharaj did, and that was he didn't have the association of devotees. That's why when he started becoming too attached to the deer, there was no other friend or no other sadhu nearby him to correct him, that Bharat Prabhu, I think you're becoming too attached to the deer, I think you're neglecting your sadhana, I don't think this is good for you. So there was no second devotee to correct Bharat Maharaj, there was no second devotee to help Bharat Maharaj in his life. So in this way, the Shastras, if we study, we can see how the association of the devotees of the Lord is the most valuable thing. And how should one, so this verse is saying, one should positively cultivate association with his spiritual master and other saintly devotees. So with other devotees, we have many nice, wonderful Vaishnavas in our congregation. We can take this Sangha in advance. But when it comes to associating with our spiritual masters, most of the time they're not present physically with us. So that's why the Shastras explain that there's two ways one can associate with the spiritual master. One is by his physical presence, and the other is through Vani, by his instructions. And according to the Shastra, Prabhupada explains that just if we remember the instructions of the spiritual master and we meditate upon it and try and carry those instructions out, that's non-different from us physically associating with the spiritual master. And Prabhupada, he gives himself as an example. Prabhupada says, look at me. In terms of physical association, Prabhupada explains, he had very, very little, very, very tiny amount of physical association with his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. On the other hand, all these big sannyasis from the Gaudiya Math, they had so much, countless hours and days and months and years of physical association with their spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But Prabhupada explains that although physically I only had very short time with my Guru, I was never separated from my Guru. Throughout my whole life, even until now, I am constantly in touch with my spiritual master. I am never separated from him. How is it Prabhupada's never separated? Prabhupada explains, because I am always remembering his instructions. My spiritual master instructed me, if you ever get any money, you print books. I'm always meditating on this instruction, therefore I'm pushing, where is book, publish more books. Therefore, every day I am writing this purport to publish more and more books, remembering the instructions of my spiritual master. And my spiritual master also instructed me that you go take this message of Krishna consciousness and you spread it in the Western world. So my whole life I've been meditating on this instruction, calculating how will I carry this out, how will I carry it out. And because throughout my whole life I've been meditating on these instructions of my Guru Maharaj, for not a moment I've been separate or been away from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So in this way, Prabhupada explains that we can constantly or always have the association of a Guru Maharaj just by remembering the instructions of our spiritual master. So all of us, we can download lectures of a Guru Maharaj and we can hear those lectures, and whatever instructions we hear from those lectures, we can remember, apply in our life, and carry them out. And just remembering those instructions is non-different from us getting the Sangha of our spiritual master. And so those are the first two things this verse explains. Then the verse explains, as we discussed, that for when we come across those who are inferior to us, we show them compassion, mercy, we help them. And for those who are equal to us, we cultivate friendship. And for those who are higher than us, we take a humble role and we go and serve them and get their blessings. Now, what is the benefit of doing this? What is the benefit of serving those higher than us, benefit of making friendship with those equal to us, benefit of showing mercy to those who are lower than us? One benefit obviously is, okay, we're pleasing Krishna, this is Krishna's instruction. If we clear it out, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath will be pleased upon us, and that's the whole purpose of life, to give Krishna and Radharani pleasure. But another angle, this similar verse comes again in the 4th canto of Bhagavatam, in the section where Narad Muni is instructing Dhruva Maharaj. If you remember in 4th canto, there's a story, Dhruva Maharaj, he goes to the forest to do tapasya, and Narad Muni, he bumps into Narad Muni, and Narad Muni, he instructs Dhruva Maharaj, are you just a little boy? You know, why are you taking this insult so seriously? Go back home, no need to do austerities. And one of the verses that Narad Muni, he speaks to Dhruva Maharaj is exactly the same verse, but he speaks this verse and he also gives a benefit that we can experience in our lives if we follow this. So this verse Narad Muni speaks is in 4th canto, chapter 8, text number 34. So it's a very important verse. Ghanshyam Prabhu was showing me this verse before. It's 4:8:34. And in this verse, Narad Muni is saying that when we come across a person who is more qualified than us, we should be very pleased at heart. We should be happy. So some sannyasis coming, some great devotees coming to give class, some senior devotees coming, then we should be immediately joyful and pleased that, okay, such nice devotees coming, we'll get to hear some nice Krishna Katha from him, we'll get to get their Sangha and advance spiritually. And when someone less qualified is coming, again this verse is explaining, one should be compassionate upon them. And when one comes across someone who's equal, one develops friendship. So same three things I mentioned, but Narad Muni, he mentions one extra point. Narad Muni says, if we associate with different living entities according to these instructions, then Narad Muni says, in this way, if we do this, one will never be affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. So Narad Muni in this verse explains that if we want to be happy in this material world, if we want to be always happy and peaceful and not get affected by miseries caused by our own mind, by miseries caused by material nature, by miseries caused by the living entities, if we want to be unattached or undisturbed by all these sufferings in this material world, if we want to be always peaceful and happy, then one should relate with different living entities according to these three principles. If we do like this, Narad Muni says, we'll always be happy, we'll never be distressed. The converse is also true. Prabhupada explains, if we don't do like this, then we'll always be unhappy. Somehow or other, distress, stress, anxiety, unhappiness will hit us. In the purport to this verse, Prabhupada explains that the general human tendency is the opposite of this. General human tendency is that when someone greater than us comes, then instead of being happy, we become envious. That this person's greater than me, he's doing, he's outperforming me. And instead of feeling happy and pleased, we become envious, thinking that, all the attention is going to this person or this devotee. Now my value will go less. Now no one will think of me. So Prabhupada says, general human tendency is the opposite. One becomes envious. And when one sees someone lower, instead of feeling compassionate, instead of feeling merciful and trying to help them come up, Prabhupada says the general human tendency is, if we see someone lower than us, then that gives us some Ishwar Bhav, that yes, I'm greater than this person. And instead of being compassionate and helping them, Prabhupada says, one will deride that person. That just look, this person is so fallen, just look what mistake he's doing, just see how foolish he is, or just see how useless this person is, just see what mistakes he's doing. And in this way one derides or starts oppressing those who are lower than him. And there's a certain feeling of Ishwar Bhav he feels, that I'm so great, this person is so low, and by finding faults he feels pleasure. So that's the other way. A natural materialist or conditioned tendency will think. And then lastly, Prabhupada explains, for those who are equal with us, general condition tendency is that when we go into the Sangha of our friends who are on equal level with us, one becomes very proud of his activities and one starts boasting. That, did you know last week I did this and that? Did you see, what I did last week? I did this so nicely. In this way, one starts speaking his own glories and one increases his false prestige. And Prabhupada says that because the conditioned soul, he becomes envious when he sees someone superior to him. Because the conditioned soul, he starts becoming proud and starts boasting, bragging about his activities when he's amongst his friends, that just see, I'm such a great cook. Did you see, taste my nice prasad? Did you see the class I gave last week? It was so nice. Did you see how I made this gown? Did you see how I do this? So when he comes across his friends, he starts boasting and bragging because he brags or starts self-glorifying himself when he's amongst his friends or equals, and because instead of being merciful, he further oppresses or he further derides and puts down and insults those who are lower than him. Because he does these three things, all suffering and anxieties come upon him. So Prabhupada says, any anxiety or suffering or unhappiness that comes in our life is due to us doing these three things. Us being envious of highers, us being proud and boastful amongst equals, and us putting down those who are inferior to us. Because we're doing these three negative things, Prabhupada says, unhappiness, as a karmic reaction to this, unhappiness, stress, anxiety, threefold miseries will come and hit us through different aspects of life. But if we do the opposite, Prabhupada explains, as Narad Muni is explaining, then we'll always be happy, we'll always be peaceful, no matter what sufferings or anxieties come by other living entities, by our own mind, or by material nature. We'll be detached, we'll be happy and peaceful if we follow the injunction of the Shastra, which is, when we see someone higher than us, we serve them, take their blessings, friendship with equals, and mercy or compassion upon those who are lower than us. Okay, so that's the little discussion on that verse from the 11th canto. It was 11.3.23. Okay, now we'll continue our discussion from Uddhava Gita. So we're starting the new chapter, chapter 10, Nature of Fruitive Activity. So as I was explaining before, this chapter is in two parts. First half, Krishna will continue on. If you look at the purport to text number 1 of chapter 10, the disciples of Prabhupada, they explained that in the previous chapters, Lord Krishna described through the story of Avadhuta Brahmana the qualities and character of a saintly person. Now the Lord describes the practical means for achieving such a saintly position. So Prabhupada's disciples, they're explaining that in the previous chapter we saw how the Avadhuta Brahmana, he observed 24 gurus, and from each guru he learned a different quality or a characteristic for a saintly person. But how should one practically acquire all these saintly qualities? Krishna will now discuss at the start of this chapter. What is the practical means by which one can acquire each of these different qualities that we saw these 24 gurus demonstrating? So the first section of this chapter, chapter 10, up to text number 12, text number 13. So text 1 to 13, Krishna will describe this, the process by which one can acquire these qualities. So basically Krishna will further give instructions on the path of Bhakti Yoga. Then Krishna will switch around from 14 till the end of the chapter. Then Krishna will start talking about the philosophy of karma mimamsa, how work is supreme, you just do work, good karma, all good result will come to you. Krishna will establish the philosophy and then he will give different arguments, smashing this atheistic philosophy of karma mimamsa. So I read text 1 of this chapter. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksulmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, text 1 of chapter 10. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, taking full shelter in me with the mind carefully fixed in the devotional service of the Lord as spoken by me, one should live without personal desire and practice the social and occupational system called Varnashrama. So again, Krishna is further propounding the philosophy of bhakti that, one should take shelter in me while doing devotional service, the mind has to be fixed upon me, and one should have no personal desire. One should simply act for my pleasure. Krishna Sukha Hetu, Mahaprabhu explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita, how all the Vrajavasis, Their whole mood is whatever they're doing for the pleasure of Krishna. When the gopis, they're dressing themselves, they're not dressing themselves as ordinary girls are dressing themselves just to look pretty and beautiful, but they're dressing themselves in the mood that, okay, if I dress myself nicely, when Krishna sees me, he will feel pleasure. And in the same way, when Mother Yasoda is cooking, she's thinking of Krishna's pleasure in cooking. So in the same way, Prabhupada explains that whatever activity we do, we should do with that mood in mind. Let me do this in a way that Krishna and the devotees, they'll get pleasure. So we'll go to the next text, text number 2. A purified soul should see that because the conditioned souls who are dedicated to sense gratification have falsely accepted the objects of sense pleasure as truth, all of their endeavors are doomed to failure. Now secondly, in this verse Krishna has explained that using transcendental knowledge as bhaktas, we should understand this point, that anyone who is engaged in sense gratification, they can never be happy. They're doomed to fail. How is it? Prabhupada, he gives often this very simple example of the fish out of water. The constitutional position of the fish is to be in the water. As long as the fish is in the water, that's its constitutional position, the fish can be happy and peaceful because that's its nature, to be in the water. If you take the fish out of water and put it on the land, no matter what you try to do, no matter if you give the fish nice chole bhatura, pizza, samosa, gulab jamun, sandesh, you give the fish a nice mansion, a nice beautiful she-fish, or so on and so forth, a nice brand new Mercedes or Ferrari, no matter what you try and give the fish will never be happy on land. Why? Because Prabhupada explains, that's not the constitutional position of the fish. The constitutional position of the fish is to be inside the water. If you take it outside of its constitutional position and put it on land, then no matter what you try and give the fish will never be happy because it's in an awkward, unconstitutional position of life. So in the same way, the Shastras explain, this verse is explaining, that because the nature of the soul is to be a servant of Krishna, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishna Nityadas. So just like the nature of the fish is to be in water, the nature of the soul is to be engaged in service to Radha Krishna. If we're not engaged in serving Krishna, that's just as same as the fish being outside of water. And just like nothing can satisfy the fish outside water, in the same way this verse is explaining, nothing can satisfy these materialists who are engaged in sense gratification. No matter what they try and do, nothing will satisfy them. No matter which way they try to gratify the senses, doing this way, that method, this method, they'll always be unhappy. Because they're neglecting their constant position of being engaged in Krishna's service. Okay, we'll go to text 3. One who is sleeping may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream, but such pleasurable things are merely creations of the mind and are thus ultimately useless. Similarly, the living entity who is asleep to his spiritual identity also sees many sense objects, but these innumerable objects of temporary gratification are creations of the Lord's illusory potency and have no permanent existence. One who meditates upon them, impelled by his senses, uselessly engages his intelligence. Now Krishna, he gives an analogy or metaphor to help us understand why engaging in sense gratification is just a useless waste of time. So Krishna is using the example of a dream. Just like when we're dreaming, we imagine many different sense objects or different things, nice pleasurable items. But we understand all these different things we're seeing in the dream, although it seems very nice and pleasing, is just a mental concoction. It's just a creation of our mind. It's not actual factual. It's all unreal. So we don't take it very seriously. So in the same way, this verse is explaining that awake, the living entity is also asleep. How is he asleep? He's asleep to his spiritual identity of being Krishna's servant. And similarly, in a wakeful state, the living entity, he sees many sense objects, but all these sense objects the living entities are seeing, they're also creations of the illusory potency of the Lord. And not only that, they have no permanent existence. All of these different sense objects we see, which give certain sense gratification, Krishna is explaining here, they're all just creations of the illusory potency of the Lord. And secondly, they're all impermanent. We can't enjoy them fully. Just for a small period of time, we'll enjoy them. As also Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita, Yehi samspasa jabhoga dukkha yonayo evate adi antavantaha konte nate suramate buddha. So same thing Krishna is explaining in Bhagavad Gita, that the Buddha or the intelligent person, he doesn't engage in sense gratification because he understands that sense gratification has a beginning and end. It only lasts for a short period of time. So what's the point? Let me go for something which is eternal and has permanent duration. So in this way, the devotee, he knows the science of actual happiness. He understands that sense gratification is just all in the mind. It's a mental concoction. Same thing Prahlad Maharaj, he explains in 7th canto that yan me tunadi griha medi sukham hitucham kanduya yena karayo eva dukkha dukkam kandutivat manasajim visaheta dira. So in the last line of this verse, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Kandutivat manasajam. So Prahlad Maharaj again is explaining that this sense gratification is just a mental concoction, manasajam. It's just a concoction in the mind. Our mind is concocting, we're enjoying, but actually we're not enjoying, actually we're suffering. Prahlad Maharaj says, Yan me tunadi griha medi sukham hitucham. Firstly he's saying this sukha or sense gratification is tucham. Tucham means very insignificant. Secondly he's saying dukkam dukkam. Yan me tunadi griha medi sukham hitucham kanduya yena eva dukkam hi dukkam. Dukkam means suffering, and Prahlad Maharaj mentions the word suffering twice, dukkam hi dukkam, just to emphasize the point that actually when we're engaging in sense gratification, it's just like scratching an itch. When we have some mosquito bite and we start scratching it, initially there's a small duration of happiness, small pleasure we feel. But essentially what's actually happening, as we're scratching, we're actually causing harm to ourselves. And there'll come a point when we keep scratching, then blood starts coming. And then our suffering increases more and more. In the same way, Prahlad Maharaj is explaining, when we engage in sense gratification, there is a tiny bit of pleasure which comes. Just like when we scratch a mosquito bite, a tiny bit of pleasing sensation comes when you scratch. But that pleasing pleasure which comes at the start, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, is tucham. It's very insignificant, it's very tiny. Secondly, Prahlad Maharaj is explaining, after that tiny, insignificant duration of pleasure is gone, what comes next? Dukkham hi dukkham. Next comes suffering, and even more suffering, and even more suffering. As we continue scratching, we continue causing harm to our own skin, and eventually blood will start coming out. In the same way Prahlad Maharaj explains, if we continue engaging in sense gratification, there will be a tiny bit of pleasure at the start. If you keep doing it, we'll just accrue more and more karma, we get more suffering, immediate suffering this life, and future suffering we'll get in the hellish planets, and we'll suffer even more. In this way we'll cause harm to ourselves. Okay, that's text 3. We'll go to text 4. One who has fixed me within his mind as the goal of life should give up activities based on sense gratification and should instead execute work governed by the regulatory principles for advancement. When, however, one is fully engaged in searching out the ultimate truth of the soul, one should not accept the scriptural injunctions governing fruitive activities. Okay, so in this verse, 3 things are given. One, if you look at the Sanskrit, one is nirvritta karma, and another thing is given pravrittam. So there's 3 things. One is pravritta karma, another one is nivritta karma, and the last one is sampravritta. So pravritta karma is the path of just sense gratification. And nivritta karma is one gives up sense gratification. Well, I'll read in the purport it's explained here. Pravritta karma is just a part of all-out sense gratification. The purport, the disciples of Prabhupada, they give the example of how karmis, they just want to enjoy the association of women. So they'll work hard just to get the company of women. And then higher than that is nivritta karma. Nivritta karma is when a religious person, he also desires the company of the opposite sex, but he'll get the company of the opposite sex under the rules and regulation of the Shastras. So that's better. He's not indiscriminately just going out, but he's doing sense gratification under rules and regulations. Then higher than that is sampravritta. That's when one attains the platform pure loving devotion. Then one just completely gives up all sorts of sense gratification, either all-out sense gratification or sense gratification under the guidance of Shastra, under the guidance of Vedic rules and regulations. So those are the 3 things that this verse is explaining. Another example the disciples Prabhupada gave is just like when we're cooking, the karmi on the lower stage, he will just cook and eat whatever he wants, whatever satisfies him, without thinking whether it's good or bad. Higher than that is the person following the Shastra. He will cook, and before he eats, he'll offer it to the deity. But whatever he's cooking, he's not cooking for the pleasure of Krishna. He's just cooking whatever he likes to eat, whatever he wants to fill his belly, and he's not cooking out of love and devotion to Krishna. but still he follows the regulation Shastra, he offers it to Krishna, and then he eats. So that's one step higher. Sense gratification is there, but it's sense gratification under the rules and regulations Shastra. So there will be some benefit. Then higher than that is the stage of Sampravritta, when one forgets about his own sense gratification, when one just cooks for the pleasure of Radha Gopinath. He thinks what would Krishna like, and he cooks for Krishna's pleasure. And as far as himself is concerned, he's detached. He just takes a little bit just to keep body and soul together. So that's the highest level. So in this way, this verse explains how the Shastra, they help one gradually evolve from the stage of complete sense gratification to come to the stage of pure loving devotion to Krishna. Then text 5. One who has accepted me as the supreme goal of life should strictly observe the scriptural injunctions forbidding sinful activities, and as far as possible should execute the injunctions prescribing minor regular duties such as cleanliness. Ultimately, however, one should approach a bona fide spiritual master who is full in knowledge of me as I am, who is peaceful, and who by spiritual elevation, is non-different from me. So now Krishna, he is bringing the Guru, how if we want to further advance, we need to take shelter of a Guru. And Prabhupada, Krishna, he is telling Uddhava, what's the qualification of the Guru? The Guru is one who is full in knowledge of Krishna. And secondly, the Guru should be peaceful in mind. So this is the actual qualification of Guru. A Guru is one who is fully absorbed in knowledge of Krishna and is engaged in Krishna's service. And you'll see Prabhupada, some verses he will quote in relation to this. One is famous verse by Mahaprabhu himself in CC, Kiba Vipra Kripa Nasi Sudra Keninoy, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, say Guru Hoy. So again, Mahaprabhu, he's saying the same thing. What is the qualification of Guru? A Guru is one, Ye Krishna Tattva. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna, knows the science of devotional service, he's a Guru. Doesn't matter if he's a sannyasi or Shudra. Kiba Vipra, Kribya Nasi, Sudra Keninoy. Doesn't matter if he's a sannyasi or a Vipra, a Brahmana or a Sudra, no matter who he is, if he has this one qualification of understanding Krishna Tattva, he's the Guru. And if someone doesn't have this qualification of being engaged in Krishna's service, having knowledge about Krishna's service, then that person's not a bona fide Guru. And one shouldn't take instructions from that person. And we see that with the 8th canto of Bhagavatam. Bali Maharaj's spiritual master was Sukracharya. But when Bali Maharaj, he saw that Sukracharya, he was deviating away from the principles of Krishna Bhakti. So the principle of Krishna Bhakti is that we should surrender to Krishna, everything is for Krishna. But what was Sukracharya saying? Sukracharya is saying that, even though this is Vishnu, lie to him, break your promise, don't give to him. If you give to him, you'll become a pauper, you'll lose all your wealth, all your money. So cheat this Brahmana boy, don't fulfill your promise, don't give in charity to this person. And Bali Maharaj, he thinks to himself that the function of a Guru is that he should be established in Krishna Bhakti, he should be taking me closer to Krishna. But now Sukracharya, instead of taking me closer to Krishna, he's taking me away from Krishna. So therefore, he's deviating from his duty as a Guru, so therefore he's not my bona fide Guru anymore, so I can reject him. So we'll go to next text, text number 6. The servant or disciple of the spiritual master should be free from false prestige. Okay, so the previous verse, Krishna said one should approach a Guru. He has said, okay, the qualification of Guru is that he has full knowledge of Krishna, he's engaged in devotional service. Now this verse is giving the qualifications of the disciple of the Guru. So what qualifications we ourselves should have in relation to our spiritual master. So this is important. Firstly, Krishna says we should be free from false prestige, never considering ourselves to be the doer. So how can we practice this? Prabhupada explains, whenever we do anything good or whenever any praise comes to us, instead of keeping that praise for ourselves, we just forward that praise to our spiritual masters. If someone comes and says, oh, you've cooked very nicely, we say, oh, it's all the mercy or blessings of my spiritual master, mercy of Guru and Gauranga. Or we say, I learned cooking from this other devotee, because this other devotee taught me how to cook, I was able to cook this nice prasad. So in this way, instead of keeping the praise for oneself, Prabhupada explains, we should take that praise and pass it on to some other devotee, or pass it on to our spiritual master, or pass it on to Krishna. Radhanath Maharaj, he gives the example that whenever any praise or glorification comes to us, it's actually very, very dangerous for our spiritual life. Radhanath Maharaj says, praise or glorification which comes to us is just like a red-hot iron coal coming into our hands. If someone throws a red-hot iron coal into our hands, if we hold on to that, then what are we doing? We're just burning our hands, we're burning ourselves. So the best thing to do when a red-hot iron coal is thrown to us is that immediately we take the coal and just throw it away to someone else, not keep it for ourselves. If we keep the iron coal to ourselves, if we keep that praise and glorification to ourselves, thinking, yes, actually I'm so great, yes, actually I'm so good at this service or that service, or I'm so good at this particular activity. If we keep that praise to ourselves, it's just like keeping a red-hot iron coal close to our heart. What will we do? We'll just burn ourselves. We'll just burn our spiritual life. We'll go backwards in our spiritual life. So that's what Radha Maharaj explains. Whenever any praise comes to us, we just quickly take it and just offload it to some other devotee. Either give that praise or glorification to our spiritual master, or give it to Krishna. Oh, it's the mercy by Krishna I was able to do this. It was the mercy of my Guru Maharaj I was able to do this. Or it's the mercy of this particular devotee taught me how to do this service. So therefore I was able to do this nicely. So in this way, if we follow this, Radha Maharaj explains, we can be safe from the downfall of being glorified or the downfall of being praised. We'll be safe from false prestige or false pride. So that's the first thing Krishna is saying. We should be free from false prestige. Secondly, we should be active and never lazy. Thirdly, he is saying that we should give up proprietorship over all object of the senses. So whatever things are in a property, Prabhupada explains, or Krishna is explaining, our wife, our children, home, society, we should see all of them in relation to Krishna. That actually, this house, it belongs to Krishna. My wife, she's a devotee of Krishna. These children, they're not my children, they're actually Krishna's devotees. I'm taking care of these children. So in this way, one sees everything in relation to Krishna. This car I have is not my property. This car is the property of Krishna, and I'm just taking care of it. So in this way, one sees everything in relation to Krishna. We can overcome this anathara of false proprietorship. Then next, Krishna is saying, he should be endowed with feelings of loving friendship toward the spiritual master. What does it mean to have friendship with the spiritual master? Having friendship with the spiritual master doesn't mean that instead of having awe and reverence to our Guru Maharaj, we start dealing with him very casually, saying, hey, how are you going? We pat him on the back and start joking around with him. So that's not the meaning of developing friendship with the Guru Maharaj, or developing friendship with one spiritual master. Not that we take them for granted, not that we become very casual in our dealings with him. No, developing friendship with the spiritual master, Prabhupada explains, means that we assist the spiritual master in their mission. We assist them in their work. Just like we'll be going around a temple and we see one particular devotee, one of our friends, he will be doing particular service. He'll be cleaning or cooking. Then, as a friend to them, we'll ask them, Prabhu, do you need any help? I'm free. Do you need any help with the cleaning? Can I help you in this particular service? And this will say, okay, yeah, you can help me. I have very little time. I need to do this quickly. Can you please help me in this service? So, as a friend, when we see another friend doing some particular service, we offer our help. We help them in that particular service. In the same way, Prabhupada explains, the Shastra explains, friendship with the Guru means that we see what particular service the spiritual master is doing, and we assist the spiritual master in doing that particular service. So if the spiritual master is focusing on this particular service, book distribution or outreach to this area or this particular seva, then we see the mood of that spiritual master, we see what service is doing, and we try and assist him. So this is the actual meaning of developing friendship with the Guru. Not that we become casual and give up awe and reverence and joke around with him, but friendship means we assist the Guru Maharaj, we assist our spiritual master in helping him fulfill his service to his spiritual master. Just like Prabhupada, he understood the mood of his spiritual master, how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. He wants Krishna Bhakti to go to the Western world. So Prabhupada, in the mood of friendship to his spiritual master, he assisted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by translating all the Shastras in English, taking it to the Western world. So that's the meaning of friendship to the spiritual master. Then Krishna explains the servant or disciple should always desire advancement in spiritual understanding, and he shouldn't envy anyone. And lastly, he should avoid useless conversation or prajalpa. We'll go to the next text, text 7. One should see one's real self-interest in life in all circumstances. One should therefore remain detached from wife, children, home, land, relatives, friends, wealth, and so on. We'll go to the next one, text number 8. Just as fire, which burns and illuminates, is different from firewood, which is to be burned to give illumination, similarly the seer within the body, the self-enlightened spirit soul, is different from the material body, which is to be illuminated by consciousness. Thus the spirit soul and the body possess different characteristics and are separate entities. So now Krishna, he gives an analogy to distinguish the soul and the body. So Krishna is saying that just as fire illuminates and burns and is different from firewood, in the same way, the soul, the nature of the soul is that it gives consciousness. And only when the soul enters the body does the body become active and display consciousness. So just like firewood is supposed to be burnt, it needs fire to be burnt and give illumination. Only when fire comes does firewood start burning and give up heat and light. So in the same way, only when the soul enters the body does the body start becoming active and give consciousness. So in this way, Krishna explains that the spirit, soul and the body, they possess different characteristics and they're separate entities. They're not one and the same. We go to next text, text number 9. Just as fire may appear differently as dormant, manifest, weak, brilliant and so on, according to the condition of the fuel, similarly the spirit soul enters a mature body and accepts particular bodily characteristics. So Krishna is further elaborating on the analogy. So here the fire represents the soul. So just like only when the fire goes to the wood, does the wood become active and does the wood give heat and light. So in the same way, only when the soul enters the body does the body become alive and active. And here in this text, Krishna is further elaborating on the example by saying, according to different conditions of the fuel, the fire will appear differently. For example, you take the example of a matchstick and a gasoline tank. You light a matchstick, a small little tiny fire will come. And that same fire, if you go and put into a big gasoline tank, you'll get a big huge fire explosion and it'll go all the way up to the sky. The same fire is there happening in the matchstick and the same fire is there which is burning the gasoline tank, but it appears to be different. One tiny fire of the matchstick is very tiny and small, and the fire which is coming from a big gasoline tank is so big and huge. So in the same way, Krishna is explaining that according to the same soul is there present all living entities. The same soul is there in the body of Brahma. The same soul is there in the body of a big elephant. And the same soul is also there in the body of a tiny ant. The same soul is making an ant move, and the same soul is also making the body of such a great person like Lord Brahma work. And the same, just like fire is there in the matchstick, the gasoline tank, in the sun, just it appears differently. So in the same way, although externally there's different bodies and they appear to act in different ways, we should understand the active principle of all different bodies is the same. The active principle of the ant, Brahma, the whale, the elephant is all the same. It's all the minute spirit soul inside. We'll go to text 10. The subtle and gross mature bodies are created by the mature modes of nature which expand from the potency of the Supreme Personal and Godhead. Mature existence occurs when the living entity falsely accepts the qualities of the gross and subtle bodies as being his own factual nature. The illusory state, however, can be destroyed by real knowledge. So this illusion of considering ourselves to be the body and the mind, Krishna is explaining here, it can be destroyed by real knowledge. Look at next text, text 11. Therefore, by the cultivation of knowledge, one should approach the Supreme Personal and Godhead situated within oneself. By understanding the Lord's pure transcendent existence, one should gradually give up the false vision of the material world as independent reality. Text number 12. The spiritual master can be compared to the lower kindling stick, the disciple to the upper kindling stick, and the instruction given by the Guru to be the third stick placed in between. The transcendental knowledge communicated from Guru to disciple is compared to the fire arising from the contact of these, which burns the darkness of ignorance to ashes, bringing great happiness both to Guru and disciple. So previous text, Krishna is explaining, okay, we understand there's the body and the soul misidentifies with the body. And how can one overcome this illusion of being the body? By transcendental knowledge. Now where to get this transcendental knowledge? Krishna is explaining here. You get that transcendental knowledge by approaching a spiritual master. And Krishna is giving a nice example here. He's saying there's three sticks. You have the lower stick, you have an upper stick, and then you have a stick in between. And if you rub these, so you have one stick at the bottom, one stick at the top, in between you have another piece of wood, and if you rub all three of these sticks together, then fire will come out. So the upper stick is considered to be the disciple, the lower stick is said to be the Guru, and the stick in between is said to be the instructions given by the Guru. So if all three things are there, if there is a bona fide Guru, if there is a bona fide disciple who is submissive and willing to hear, then when the instructions comes from the mouth of Guru, then there will be Divya Gyan sprouted within the heart of the disciple, and using that Divya Gyan or transcendental knowledge, the disciple can overcome all ignorance. The ignorance within his heart will be burned to ashes. Just by rubbing these three sticks, fire comes in the same way. When there's a bona fide Guru, when there's a bona fide disciple, and instruction comes from the mouth of the Guru, then that instructions will help the disciple burn to ashes whatever ignorance pervades his consciousness. Next brings us to text 13. By submissively hearing from an expert spiritual master, the expert disciple develops pure knowledge which repels the onslaught of material illusion arising from the three modes of material nature. Finally, this pure knowledge itself ceases, just as fire ceases when the stock of fuel has been consumed. So what does this last line of this text mean? So it's saying, okay, you submissively hear from Guru, you get transcendental knowledge, using that knowledge you overcome the illusion. But then the last line Krishna is saying, finally this pure knowledge itself ceases, just as fire ceases when the stock of fuel has been consumed. So when Krishna is saying that, okay, you get this Divya Gyan, and you use it for some time, but after some time, this knowledge will go away, just as fire, after burning for some time, it will cease to be. What does Krishna mean by this? It's explained in the purport. If you go to the first paragraph of this purport, the last line, the disciples Prabhupada explained that as one advances to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness, experiencing the presence of the Lord everywhere, one's attention shifts to the transcendental platform. At that time, pure knowledge itself, one's constant technical awareness of illusion diminishes, just as fire diminishes and is extinguished after consuming its stock of fuel. So this knowledge of the technical awareness of illusion, that okay, this is Maya, Maya acts like this, okay, sense gratification is temporary, there's a certain duration of life. So all this technical awareness of sense gratification, the fallacy of mature enjoyment, how everything is working. In the higher stages of bhakti, all this knowledge is not required, because in the higher stages, when one is in spontaneous love and attraction to Krishna, one's mind spontaneously just flows towards Krishna. One is just spontaneously day and night just thinking about Krishna and Krishna's pleasure. So then at that time, all this technical knowledge about material world, about sense gratification, about this and that is not needed anymore. So that's what Krishna is explaining here. So that concludes the first section of his chapter, and that brings us to the next section, where Krishna will talk about the Karma Mimamsa philosophy. So text 14 to 16, Krishna will give a whole overview of what this philosophy is, and to summarize it in simple words, Prabhupada explains in Krishna book. So this Karma Mimamsa philosophy, if you remember in the chapter of Govardhan Puja, Krishna, he uses this philosophy to preach to Nanda Maharaj why we shouldn't do the Indra Puja. So Krishna, he asks as an innocent child, what is all this paraphernalia of puja? Who is it for? And then Nanda Maharaj says, okay, it's for Indra. We have to do this puja to get rains. When we get rains, we will get grass. Then the cows will get milk. And then we can live nicely as Vaishyas. Then Krishna explains, why do we have to worship Indra? We just do our duty. We just do our particular duty, our karma. And Indra will be obliged to give us rains anyway. We don't have to separately worship Indra. So this is the, Prabhupada explains in simple terms, Karma Mimamsa means that work is all. All you have to do is just do good work. You just be a nice and moral person, you do your proper duty, religious moral duties, and as an active result of that, all good things will come to you, and happiness will come to you, that's it. Even if for argument's sake there is a God, there's no God, but even if, let's say, there is a God, still that God is subservient to karma. If you do good karma, that God is forced to give you good results. Just like a government. Prabhupada gives the example of a government. If you be a good citizen, if you pay your taxes, if you follow all the rules and regulations of the government, then the government is forced to take good care of you. The government is forced to give you Medicare, this benefit, that benefit, and so on. Why one should endeavor to go behind the back and flatter some government ministers? Or another example Prabhupada gives is you're going to do an examination at a university. You want to graduate as an engineer, and you have to do an exam on engineering. Now, to pass the examination and to become an engineer, all you have to do is study hard and get all the answers right in the examination, and you pass and you become an engineer. What is the necessity of going behind the back and try to flatter or try to develop some friendship with the person making the exam? No, you just get all the answers right. The person who has written the exam, he'll be forced to give you good results. He'll be forced to pass you as an engineer. You don't have to separately go and worship the teacher. Oh, you're so great. Please give me your blessings. You don't have to separately go and do that. So this is the philosophy of Karma Mimamsa. That work is all in all. We just simply do good work. All good result will come. Happiness will come upon us. And even if there is a God, for argument's sake, that God is subservient to good karma. You do good karma, that God will be forced to give you good results. So that's in simple terms, the whole philosophy of Karma Mimamsa. And if we go to that chapter of Krishna book of Govardhan Puja, Krishna, he talks about this philosophy. So that's text 14 to 16 in brief summary of the philosophy of Karma Mimamsa. And now Krishna, he will give different arguments smashing this philosophy of Karma Mimamsa. So we quickly go through this. So we'll go to text 17. Firstly, Krishna explains that although the performer of fruitive activities desires perpetual happiness, it is certainly observed that materialistic workers are often unhappy and only occasionally satisfied, thus proving that they are not independent or in control of their destiny. When a person is always under the superior control of another, how can he expect any valuable results from his own fruitive actions? So here Krishna is saying that these Karma Mimamsas, they say that if I do good work, I'll get happy, I'll get happiness, all good things will come upon me. But here Krishna is saying that we can observe that although these Karma Mimamsas, they desire perpetual happiness, we observe that actually they're not always happy. Instead, Krishna says we're actually observing that most of the times they're unhappy, and only for a short period of time we're observing them to be happy. So on the basis of this argument, Krishna is saying we can see that actually they're not independent of their destiny. They want to be happy all the times, and they do hard work to be happy, but the end result is they're not happy all the times. Most of the times they're struggling, they're having this problem, this anxiety, that anxiety, and only for a short flickering moment of times they're happy. So in this way, firstly, Krishna argues and he smashes that philosophy. Next text, text 18, is something Prabhupada will often quote to defeat Karma Mimamsa. So according to Karma Mimamsa, you just work hard and you get good result. And Prabhupada, who used this logic, if by simply good work alone you can get good result, then why is it that in school or university we see that many students, they work hard, but not all the students, they get high marks? The student 1 and student B, student A and student B, both of them, they work very hard, both of them, they study for so many hours, but one student, he gets such high marks, and the other student, he just barely passes, even though he studied hard. So there's this inequality. If working hard is the only factor to determine one's good result, then why is it there's so much inequality? Why is it that someone is working hard, not getting good result, and on the other hand, someone is not even working hard. He might not even have studied enough, just studied a little bit, but still, even by studying a little bit, he gets such great results. So that very simple argument Prabhupada will always use to smash Karma Mimamsa, and that same philosophy Krishna will talk about in text 18. So I read text 18. It is observed within the material world that sometimes even an intelligent person is not happy. And on the other hand, Krishna is saying, similarly, sometimes even a great fool is happy. The concept of becoming happy through expertly performing material activities is simply a useless exhibition of false egoism. So again, Krishna is saying the same thing. That according to your philosophy, you just very expertly do material work and you get good results, you'll be happy. But Krishna is saying that actually we're observing the opposite. Many times in society, Krishna has explained, we're observing that sometimes someone is very intelligent and very expert at doing things. But despite them being very intelligent and expert, they're not happy. They're suffering through so many anxieties. On the other hand, Krishna is saying, sometimes we see someone is a complete fool. He doesn't know how to do anything properly. But even though he's a complete fool, still somehow or other he's happy in life. Somehow or other he's getting all good things happening in him. So in this way, Krishna explained that we're not actually independent. We're not actually in control of our destiny. And simply karma itself, simply good work itself, is not the only factor. There's higher factors. There's the Supreme Cause, Krishna, who's governing everything. So someone might be intelligent and expert in doing good karmic activities, but occasionally he might trip or accidentally commit some mistake, accidentally do some sinful activity, due to that which he has to suffer. So he's not fully in control. And the same way, someone might be grateful, but somehow or other, by divine arrangement, he bumps into some sadhu or some saintly devotee, and by their mercy, he does some, unknowingly, he gets some agyanta sukriti, unknowingly he does some devotional service, due to which, even though he's a fool and a sinful person, he will get some spiritual benefit. So in this way, someone might be full, but still be enjoying life, due to unknowingly doing some service to the Vaishnavas, service to Krishna. Then we go to text 19. Even if people know how to achieve happiness and avoid unhappiness, they still do not know the process by which death will not be able to exert its power over them. So this is another argument Krishna is saying, that even for argument's sake, let's say you actually do achieve happiness. Actually you can't, most of the time you're suffering, and only a small period of time you're happy. But let's say for argument's sake, you get happiness. Still Krishna is saying, they don't know the process by which death will be, by which they can stop death. So birth, death, old age and disease is fixed. No matter what you do, you can't overcome death. And how can you be happy when you understand that any time you can be slain by death? At any time you have to give up your body, give up your family, possessions and go somewhere else. And in the purport, the devotees of Prabhupada, they give the example that death is just like an axe hanging above our neck. And if someone is constantly there next to you holding an axe, and you don't know when this person will just come down and chop your head off, how can you be happy? If all the time there's some guy behind you with an axe, anytime he can pounce upon you with the axe, how can you be happy watching TV? How can you be happy playing sports? How can you be happy going to movies? How can you be happy going on a vacation? Because all this time there's like a guy with an axe, anytime he can come. So that guy with the axe, anytime who can bite us, or the guy with the axe who anytime can kill us, that's compared to death. So, because death can pounce upon us at any time, and these Kama Mimamsas, they have no solution to that. In that way, Krishna is explaining that actually through this philosophy of Kama Mimamsa, one can't be happy, because one can't stop death. Death is always be looming upon you. The fear of death will always be there. And through your philosophy, you can't overcome death. You have to go through it. Text 20, Krishna further elaborates the same point. Death is not at all pleasing, and since everyone is actually like a condemned man, being led to a place of execution, what possible happiness can people derive from material objects or the gratification they provide? Text 21. That material happiness of which we hear, such as promotion to heavenly planets for celestial enjoyment, is just like that material happiness we have already experienced. Both are polluted by jealousy, envy, decay, and death. Therefore, just as an attempt to raise crops becomes fruitless if there are many problems like crop disease, insect plague, or drought, similarly, the attempt to attain material happiness, either on earth or on the heavenly planets, is always fruitless because of innumerable obstacles. So now Krishna is saying, okay, maybe material happiness on this middle planetary system might not work out, but I'll do good karma and go to the higher planets. And in the Swarga Loka, where Indra is, I'll get good, nice material sanskar there, I'll enjoy nicely there with the denizens of heaven. But Krishna here is pointing out that the happiness which is present on Swarga Loka is exactly the same like the happiness we're experiencing here. So I'll read this again. If you read the first line of this translation, Krishna is saying, the material happiness which we hear, such as promotion of the heavenly planets. So the happiness which is there in Swarga Loka, Krishna is saying, is just like that happiness we have already experienced. Both of them, happiness in this world and happiness in the higher world, Krishna is saying, both of them are polluted by jealousy, both of them are polluted by envy, both of them are polluted by decay, and both of them are polluted by death. So in this way Krishna established, even if you go to the higher planets, still you won't enjoy peacefully there. Still unhappiness will come to you there. Still you'll be overcome by problems like jealousy, envy, decay, and death. So even over there in Swargaloka, you can't enjoy happily. And we see through Bhagavatam numerous examples how the Devas, they're not actually just all the time enjoying. They're going through so many anxieties and troubles. Just like in 9th canto, we see Soma. What does he do? He gets attracted by the wife of his own spiritual master, Brihaspati. And he forcibly kidnaps the wife of his own guru and begets a child through her. and that child becomes Buddha. So such an abominable action, something so sinful and degraded, is also happening in Swargaloka. So it's not like in heavenly planets, everything's very hunky-dory, everything's going nicely. But even in the heavenly planets, such crazy things are going. That one great personality, the moon god, goes and has an affair, forcibly kidnaps and molests the wife of his own spiritual master. Even Bhagavatam gives the example of Brihaspati himself. He is the guru, he is the spiritual master of the devas, but even he gets attracted by the wife of his own by the wife of his brother. And then he goes and has an affair with his own brother's wife. And Indra, we see, he does many blunders. So in this way, Bhagavatam gives many examples showing how unhappiness, suffering is also there in the heavenly planets. All these things that we see going around in the middle planetary system is also happening in Swargaloka. So therefore Krishna is saying, there's no point doing good karma and raising yourself to higher planets, because whatever things we're experiencing here, we'll experience in the higher planets also. Text 22. If one performs Vedic sacrifices and fruitive rituals without any mistake or contamination, one will achieve a heavenly situation in the next life. But even this result, which is only achieved by perfect performance of fruitive rituals, will be vanquished by time. Now hear of this. So now again, Krishna will further elaborate about this point, that this being promoted heavenly planets, it's not a permanent situation. That it's not that, okay, you do good karma, go to heavenly planets, and eternally life after life, or for eternity, you can just enjoy that. Firstly, you're not fully enjoying, you'll come across different anxieties and distresses, like we're explaining with the case of Soma, Brihaspati, Indra. Secondly, even if there is all happiness there, it's temporary. You can only enjoy this certain period of time, then again you'll be forced to come down. So this verse and the next couple of verses, Krishna, we won't go through all of them because it's just describing about the nature of heavenly enjoyment, how one goes up there, and how one falls down. But basically this verse and the next couple of verses, Krishna explained how one nicely goes and enjoys in the heavenly planets, but after one's pious activities are exhausted, one will be forced by time to give up his body and come down, fall back down to the middle planetary system. So that's so-called enjoyment in heavenly planets, Krishna again explains, is temporary. After some time, you'll be forced to be dragged down from there, and we will be forced to fall down into the middle planetary system. So that brings us to text 30. So those couple of texts, I'll just briefly summarize. We'll skip to text number 30. In all the planetary systems, from the heavenly to the hellish, and for all the great demigods who live for 1,000 yuga cycles, there is fear of me in my form of time. Even Brahma, who possesses the supreme lifespan of 311 trillion, 40 billion years, even he is also afraid of me. So again, Krishna, he is again highlighting the same point, that although externally looks like these demigods are enjoying, but what to speak of these great demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, even Brahma, who lives for 300 trillion years and 40 billion years. Even Brahma, who has such a great, vast lifespan, even Brahma himself is afraid of death. Even though Brahma lives for so long, Krishna has explained, even he is also afraid of me in the form of death. We'll go to text 31. The material senses create material activities, either pious or sinful, and the modes of nature set the material senses into motion. The living entity, being fully engaged by the material senses and modes of nature, experiences the various results of fruitive work. So this verse, text 32, we all discuss similar thing. We'll go to text 33. Text number 33. The conditioned soul who remains dependent on fruitive activities under the material modes of nature will continue to fear me, the Supreme Personality Godhead, since I impose the results of one's fruitive activities. Those who accept the material concept of life, taking the variegatedness of the modes of nature to be factual, devote themselves to material enjoyment and are therefore always absorbed in lamentation and grief. So now Krishna, this you can take as like a concluding verse of this section. Krishna is finally concluding and saying, okay, all these Kama Mimamsa people who say, just do good work, you will get happiness. What is the end result? That by devoting themselves to material enjoyment, what do they actually get? They just get lamentation and grief. How is it they get lamentation and grief? Because that so-called pleasure which comes to them is very temporary. Just for a certain period of time they're enjoying, but then time will come and just snatch that away from them. You get a new iPhone or new this or new that. Certain period of time you're enjoying, but after some time it will become old and you have to throw that away, get something else. Or time will come as death. and just finish whatever we have. Finish our house, finish our car, our family members, the reputation, name, fame, all those things we've accumulated throughout our whole 70 years or 80 years of life. Time will come as death and just completely smash everything to pieces and just take it away. So in this way, if one follows this philosophy of karma mimamsa or fruitive work, the end result, Krishna is saying, is just more lamentation and grief. Because this, the nature of fruitive activity is such that it's temporary. You can only enjoy it for a short period of time. You do a lot of hard work, you just get a small time to enjoy, and then it will be taken away from you. And when the enjoyment is taken away from you, then you lament, oh, it went away. And finally, at the time of death, everything will be finished. So in this way, Krishna, he concludes this section of Kama Mimamsa. So again, to summarize, the whole philosophy of Kama Mimamsa is that work is all in all. You just do good work, you work hard, you work sincerely, you will be happy in life, all good things will come upon you. There's no God, but even for argument's sake, even there is God, that God is a servant to karma. Because if you do good work, that God will be forced to give you good result. So in this way, forget about coming to temple, forget about, what's the need of coming to temple, doing puja, doing worship, doing devotional service. You just simply do your moral duty, and God will be forced to give you good karma. So that's the philosophy of Kama Mimamsa. But Krishna, as we read together, he was explaining how this is actually not the case. If we observe society, we'll see that there'll be two persons. Both the persons will work very hard, but they'll get different results. One person will work hard, get very nice result. The other person, despite working hard, he won't get the same result. He'll get low result. Or Krishna, he even puts forward the example that someone will be very intelligent, but he'll get unhappiness. On the other hand, someone will be a great fool, but even though he's a great fool, he'll get happiness coming upon him. So in this way, Krishna explains, if we observe society, we see the opposite happening, which means that karma itself or hard work itself is not the only factor. There is a second factor, which is Krishna's sanction, Krishna's hand, which is making different things happen, which is making the results happen. And then Krishna, we saw, he explained how the nature of fruitive activity is temporary, and even if we go to heavenly planets, the nature of the enjoyment of heavenly planets is the same as the nature here. And it's temporary, again we have to fall back down. And lastly, Krishna was saying that death, we can't overcome death by this philosophy Kama Mimamsa. And it's just like having a person with an axe ready to chop your head, or it's just like having a snake. Anytime the snake can bite you. So if all the time a snake is there, ready to bite you, how can you be peaceful and happy in life? How can you actually enjoy and be happy? How can you peacefully watch TV, go out, do this and do that, if you know that any time death can come and kill you? So in this way, Krishna, he smashes this philosophy of Kama Mimamsa. And we won't cover the last few texts, like text 35, 36 and 37 is spoken by Uddhava. It's questions Uddhava puts forward to Krishna. And these questions form the basis or the link to the next chapter. So that Ghanshyam Prabhu will cover next week because it's in relation to the next chapter. So in this way this chapter ends. We'll stop here. Nantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol.